because back in the summer, Unity of Fredericksburg reached out and said they would like for me to start coming twice a month, and I was already booked in September, so this is actually the first time that we're getting into that rhythm, which excites me because it gives us some sense of continuity where we can tie together messages and get some momentum going forward. So I'm excited about that for however that long that goes on. So I've mentioned before to you all that I went to school in Fredericksburg at Mary Washington. I actually have 2 degrees from Mary Washington. One of them's in theater and the other one is in sociology. So I can kind of have my moments where I really get into kind of, you know, social science theories and things like that. And so the first thing I want to do this morning is share with you about one of my favorite videos on YouTube, and it is from a pair of Swedish social scientists, and there's a book associated with it. Here's the book. It's called Factfulness. So I have it here in case, you know, something I talk about, you're like, ooh, that's interesting. But just kind of as my my opening bit here this morning, I want to tell you essentially the story of this video. So the video has a name, I don't have it memorized, but it's something like How to Not Be Ignorant About the World. And it's all about how accurate our perception is of what's going on in the world. And it's a very entertaining video, so there might be a time in the future where I could, you know, it's about 15 minutes long, but it's very entertaining, where they, and they sort of do a question answer kind of situation. It's similar to if you were at a large university in a lecture hall where every seat kind of has a clicker, and that apparently is standard these days. If you're in a big lecture class, that you sign in using the clicker, you answer questions. So they're using that mode in this video to kind of gauge how aware the audience is of the state of the world. And they're looking at 3 different areas in particular, and the book goes into a lot more than that. And the areas they talk about in the video are distribution of wealth across the globe, the availability of education for girls, kind of as a marker of progress of how much girls are, you know, how many years of education, and our overall capacity to survive natural disasters. So those are the 3 different things. They ask the question of the audience. The audience is putting in their answers. So here's an example of one of their questions. In the last 20 years, how did the level of people living in extreme poverty change? So imagine you had a clicker. That's your question, all right? How did the level of people living in extreme poverty change? And your choices are A, almost doubled, B, remained about the same, or C, reduced by half. So they're presenting this, and they've done this with a number of audiences. So these are social scientists. They have data and they're ready to show you. But first they want you to know that this is a good experiment because there's a control group. And the control group is a collection of chimps at the zoo. So they just play with the clickers. And so here's the news, folks. Across the board with every audience, the chimps beat the people. And they have the data to show it in this video and in this book. And the reason is, think about it, where do you find out about the world? You find out from
Constantly
the media.
Negative.
You find out from the media, right? The media is looking for, stuff to feed you information. I mean, like so far today, just from driving, I live in Richmond here, I know that a plane in Russia, in Siberia, crashed into a house. Like, do I need to know that?
Yeah.
But that's, the media sort of frames what you know in the world.
Right.
And across the board, the chimps beat the people in accuracy. Because the people will tend to choose the most like, what was your answer to the question? Do you remember the question about poverty?
Doubled.
So,
You should poll us.
Doubled. and that you're all incorrect. So the chimp beats you. The answer is that the level of people living in extreme poverty has reduced by half.
Wow.
So one of the things they tell you in the video is like, okay, if you're given an option, go for the most optimistic option, because in general, looking across all of these kinds of macro level trends, things have gotten and continue to get better. So hold that thought, because that's what's going to tie through to my message today. This was just my opening story for you, rather than a joke or something like that. But there's data across all of these kinds of things to show that humanity, the world, is evolving in a positive way. But of course, all we hear is the sensational stuff that's in the media. And they go out and pick the exceptionally bad things, and all of a sudden you know about the bad thing that happened all the way across the world and has nothing to do with your life. And we know, and because of technology, we know it so much faster too. We know, like right now, this happened last night across the world.
And it creates so much anxiety.
Exactly. So, let me see if I can tie this in with the actual topic, shall I?
Isn't it? The visual
I know you
is
will.
really good. What a great visual.
So, the last time I was here, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the power of order. And I left you hanging because we talked about the power of order. And this is a part of the 12 powers, which is a set of teachings that Unity uses about kind of divine capacities that we all have within us. And the power of order we talked about on a personal level, and we talked about how we manage our consciousness, like our thoughts and feelings, and things that we do as in organize, sequence, balance, adjust. We looked at examples of all of that. And this week, we're moving into divine order. Because divine order is a phrase, a term that's thrown around quite frequently, but I'm not really sure that we're solid on what that means. So, because it's used in lots of different ways. So, I like to start with definitions. So, I'm looking at the 12 Powers by Charles Fillmore, Unity founder Charles Fillmore. So, let's listen to his, I'm gonna change some words and tenses and things like that to make this collective, since a lot of this old-timey writing, of course, is written in a very male-centered perspective. So, let's see what he has to say. People never exercise dominion, as in kind of having mastery and control over your own life, until they know who and what they are. And knowing, bring forth that knowledge into the external by exercising it in divine order, which is mind, idea, manifestation. There's the definition of divine order, which I see some like, what are we talking about? So let's look at that one more time.
Yes.
All right, so people never exercise dominion until they know who and what they are. Who being your personality, what being, as we teach in Unity, you've got the universe, or divine mind, God mind, sometimes some people call it God, expressing at the point of each and every one of us, and in nature and flowers and everything. I mean, we talk about this energy that we sometimes call God being present in every moment in time, every space in time. There's not a place where God is not, or where that energy of goodness is not. And it's expressing at the point of each one of us. Like each one of us is a broadcaster of all of that divine energy. And we have within us the capacity to use all of these elements of our divine nature. Sometimes we use them well, sometimes we don't. So, let's go back. People can never exercise dominion until they know who and what they are. And knowing, bring forth that knowledge into external exercising it in divine order. which is mind, idea, manifestation. Or as I say more frequently, mind, idea, expression. So in the metaphysical realm, mind as in the universe, idea as it becomes specific in, you know, each individual, and then expression as you move it out into the world. So what we're talking about when we're talking about divine order is a process. It's a process, an activity that's happening all the time. So on a personal level, each and every one of us is sort of drawing upon all these elements of divine nature to do our personal lives, to express the power of love, to use the power to speak our word in the world. And on a macro level, kind of tying back to the story about the video I showed you, is that all manifestation is expressing in this process of divine order. And because one of the synonyms that we use for God is good, good is always present, always expressing in every circumstance, and just continues to grow and grow and grow and grow all the time. So that's how I got the story about the chimps linked up with our topic here today, is because there is part of this, part of the aspect of understanding in divine order is understanding this ever evolving positive direction of being. That overall, things are moving in a positive direction. Now, you might have like a bump in the road where it's like, oh, I'm having a really hard time now, but chances are you're going to pick yourself up and keep going and be doing better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. I'm pointing at it at an example. There are also other big theories out there that say this, that aren't tied to anything spiritual. Some of you may have heard of spiral dynamics. Spiral
Oh,
dynamics
yes.
is also
We studied that.
one of those wonderful things that kind of shows that not only over the history of all of humanity does humanity continue to evolve in a generally positive direction. Do bad things happen and you kind of slide back down? Yeah, but in general, things continue to evolve in a positive direction. And also on the personal level, we can all see that happening in our lives. You know, when you look at where you were 20 years ago, if you're old enough to be able to do that, you go, did I have it together more then than I had, you know, do I have it more together now than I had then? And, you know, probably yes. There might be some areas it's like I'm still having this issue, but in general, I feel like I've got it together. I feel like I'm a better person. But all of this is very different than how we commonly hear the phrase divine order used, right? That's very different, which is why we need to talk about it. Right? So I'm going to look at this book. This is a cute little book called Get Over It.
Yes.
And there's another one called Get Over These Two. And so it's phrases like divine order, and things like that that are kind of reframed by these wonderful authors, Paul Hasselbeck and Bill Holton. So they're talking about divine order, what this phrase assumes, because think about how you've heard it used in the past. So divine order is one of the most misunderstood New Thought concepts. It is most often used in the traditional sense that there is a God outside of us ordering everything that happens in the universe, including our daily lives. The idea is that there's a set order for our lives and that all our activities are governed by it. So when we have something nice happen and you say, oh, it's divine order, as if the universe is like Santa Claus that's just giving you a gift. We're thinking in kind of magical terms of a deity that gives you presents if you do well, and if you're naughty, takes things away from you. And of course, that's not where we're coming from in unity. So let me check my notes, because I'm like, sometimes I get excited. So, so what we say in unity is that we're affirming that God mind is expressing and access, we have access to that, every one of us, and we draw upon that as we do our lives, this activity of living. So divine order is an activity of consciousness. So there's that order, that process, mind, idea, expression. Or you can think of God mind, if you prefer like traditional terms that have a more Christian slant to them, God mind, Christ consciousness, manifestation. Also, it also ties in, we could do a whole message on this, to the Trinity. So the classic historical Trinity in the Bible is Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Well, this is the metaphysical version of that, mind, idea, expression. So it's a process that's happening all the time. It's happening according to the level of your consciousness. So if you're carrying around a belief that I'm not good at that, I always fail at that, and you take it into the situation, that's what you're drawing upon. That's kind of the lens you're using to draw upon the divine. So guess what happens? You probably are going to get frustrated again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing is that in unity, we teach that like we can work with our thoughts and feelings. So we can take the steps to do the work, whatever that is, to unpack that belief and let it go, release it, so that the next time we go into said situation, like starting a new job or meeting someone new, we can go in without that, bag of rocks that we're carrying around. And of course, that's an ongoing process that we can, we have the opportunity to keep working on our whole lives, because most of us have, a pretty big bag of rocks, right? So it is saying that, we're kind of using all of this, all of divine nature according to our consciousness. So it can show up in different ways. So we can say, but wait, all this bad things still keeps happening. And it's like, okay, how are you using? How are you using your divine nature? And as we lift our focus out of the chaos of the outer world and shift our attention to that place of stillness and allness that is at the center of us, we can, we shift into our divine awareness, and we can start saying, I am divinely ordering my life, rather than divine order being something that's happening out there and I have no control. You can step into, I am divinely ordering my life. So let's just use an example that I hope will work. So I live in Richmond, so when I finish up here, I'm gonna head down to Richmond. And as we all know, there might be traffic. Yeah, so let's say, and let's just imagine a world where there's no GPS. Can anyone imagine that? Oh, back in the olden days.
No.
Back in the olden days when we didn't have Google to say, oh, look what's going on up here. So I don't have GPS. I sit into my car and I have that kind of, I'm betting I shouldn't get on 95 today. So what I do, because it's like I'm smart, I'm gonna go down Route 1 for a while, because when you get to the point where Route 1 intersects with 95, you can see the highway.
Right. You can
You
see,
see the highway, and it's just a standstill.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to continue on Route 1. This is divine order. And I find out later that, I hear news of just a horrible wreck there, because, I just need to know about how horrible that. So I say in my old fashioned way, that was divine order. Like, Santa Claus God has said, oh, go this way. So there's that mode. And then there's the mode where I step into my car, I get that instinct of, I'm thinking I shouldn't get on the highway. And I recognize this as an expression of my power of wisdom, that I'm tapped into all that is. And it's saying, I'm not feeling like that's our best choice. So Our power of wisdom, we've talked about that, is kind of our evaluative power. So, my brain can kind of take that and start working pluses and minuses, how much time I have. In the meanwhile, I'm going to go down Route 1 until I can sort of get a glimpse of what's going on. And all the time that I'm getting to that point where I can see 95, my power of order is checking in, saying, my power of wisdom is evaluating pros and cons, pros and cons. My power of order is going, this is your next best step, to stay on Route 1. So I'm going to, at that point, I can engage with my power of release. So I'm going to let go of my worry about what time I get back to Richmond. Because I'm like, oh, if I go on Route 1, it's going to take longer, but then traffic might take even longer. So I'm going to release my worry, and I'm going to use my power of will, which makes the choice for you, is kind of the executive power, and my power of faith to see everything working out, even though I'm not seeing all of those things in front of me. And then I'm going to persist on ahead, use my power of strength, and get home safely and in time, and with gratitude, because at every step along the way, I'm being grateful for the fact that I have all the good that we call God, all of this wonderful, I have access to all of that, and I can use it in order to travel safely from point A to point B. So there's a very different energy about that experience than the other experience where I'm basically a victim of like bad traffic or those kinds of things. So I just encourage you to lean into understanding that you can divinely order your life, that divine order is this process by which you tap into and draw from your divine nature and all of the wonderful aspects that are present. And there's an underpinning assumption that ties back to even, we were talking about the chimps and the video and whatever. There's an underpinning assumption that good, God or good, is present and growing and evolving in every circumstance. There's that underpinning belief. Now, of course, if you're carrying around a belief that everything, if you believe instead, if you put your faith, say, in Murphy's Law, then guess what your brain will find for you? It will find the thing that's going wrong. But if you lean into that underpinning belief about goodness being present and evolving and growing, then guess what you find? So we can take this all the way back to the teachings of Jesus, because some of us find that very meaningful. So from Luke 22, some of you may have heard this before. He said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, or what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them."
Mhm.
So for those of you who like to have that anchor in Christian scripture, it's right there. Don't worry. Assume that the good is present and that you have the capacities to find it in every circumstance. And that divine order, when we say divine order, that is the process of this good manifesting. And that is the process of you tapping into your divine nature so that you can see and be good manifesting. So you can say to yourself, I look for the good, I find the good. Be better than a chimp.
Yes.
Although chimps are wonderful, aren't they?
Yes.
So, we're going to take this and just kind of move right into a time of meditation. So, one of the things that's really crucial is that, we spend a lot of time talking, thinking, concepts. It's really important for us to take these things that we talk about and move it into the heart space. So we're very familiar with our brains and how our brains work and how our brains want to just analyze things and find, but it's important for us to move into the heart space. And our hearts speak to us in a different kind of language. Our hearts don't speak to us in words. They basically your heart speaks in a range that can, be defined simply as sort of want or not want. What feels in alignment, that's good, or this is not. So if you all can remember, I don't know if you played a game when you were a kid where, somebody has their eyes covered up and you need to find someone else and they're like, you're getting hotter, 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 colder, colder. But that's the kind of range that your heart talks in. So that's what we're going to do now in our time of meditation. So I encourage you to take a couple breaths. I don't know if we're going to turn some lights off. Should I do that? Or
Yes.
Cassandra, because you're close. All right.
Flip to the next slide. Meditation slide.
All right. So let's take a couple deep breaths. Just kind of center into this space. Our heads have been floating around, listening, thinking, being distracted, being present. If you want, you can allow your outer eyes to drift closed, whatever is comfortable for you. Just focus on the breath. Feel your body in the seat. Just hear the sounds going on around you and focus on the breath. And I encourage you to bring a situation to mind that you would like to hold in prayer. There's something going on in your life or in the world. And from your point of focus, since we've been so much in our head, I'd like for you to take your focus sort of into the center of your head so that you're almost like your awareness is floating there in the middle of your head so you can look at the back of your eyes, but you're not in that usual space of tied to all of your thinking. And from that place, just allow this concern and your awareness to gently, gently float down into your heart space. And if you wish, you can put your hand on your heart or both your hands. That helps you anchor where this space is. And ask yourself about this situation that you've come to mind. How do I want to feel about this circumstance? How do I want to feel? Just allow yourself to be aware of that leaning of what you want to be feeling. And your brain might be floating around different aspects of the situation so that you're able to discern, no, I don't want that, but I do want this. And just be in that space. Let the power of love show you what you desire around this circumstance. And from here, we're just going to take a few moments in the silence together. And we'll begin to bring our awareness back to right here, right now. Feeling that hand on the heart if you've taken that opportunity. Being rooted in the power of love in this heart space. Knowing that our power of love will partner with our power of order to help us determine the next best step. What feels like the next best step. Affirming that there is an ever upward evolution in consciousness, in circumstance, in life. And we are grateful. So as we come back into this room and allow your eyes to open up. We will close with an affirmation to seal all this in consciousness, to really plant those seeds in our consciousness, knowing that they will grow to fruit as time goes on. So here's the affirmation. I evolve in positive ways, and I am grateful. Let's say it with me.
I evolve in positive ways, and I am grateful.
Let's do it again with a bit more energy.
I evolve in positive ways, and I am grateful.
One more time with lots of energy.
I evolve in positive ways, and I am grateful.
So it is, my friends.